So I need to frame our conversation and what we're going to have by giving you some context of why you're here and why I'm standing here in front of you. First and foremost, I want to thank Sean Granberry and Hip Hop TV, who's actually taking a picture of me, for being the catalyst to have us here. Sean said, you know, I'm going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Black Panther Party, and we want to do a panel on tech. I said, Black Panther Party tech, why do you want to do that, and why do you want me to be involved? And Sean knows what Bryan and I have been doing for a number of years and thought that it would be appropriate for me to get involved in this panel, so I wanted to thank him for that. But why we're here is there is a big problem in technology. And if you're not aware, a lot of companies here in Silicon Valley and the Bay Area have produced their numbers thanks to the pressure that Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition have put upon the industry. You know, a lot of the tech companies' customers happen to be underrepresented minorities, you know, black people particularly, as well as women. Well, let's see how many black people and women are in your companies. And so these companies produced their numbers, and they were very dismal at best. Many of the companies had between 1% and 2% African American, and most of them had less than 30% women. And this was over a year and a half ago. So last year, I went to a conference put on, well, a workshop or a presentation put on by the San Francisco Foundation, Policy Link, and USC. And at that conference, they basically talked about what the industry would look like and what the Bay Area would look like the next 10 to 20 years if there weren't more African Americans into technology. So I looked at the data and the presentation they made, and they said, well, look, there are, in the tech companies in Silicon Valley, how many, if we have 1% black people that live there, work there, how many of those people live there? The numbers of people that live there where they work were very low. And as you know, with property values, the school districts are funded by the property values of that area. So if there aren't black people that are working at the companies, and they don't live where the companies are, the people that do live there, their school systems are going to be well established, very wealthy, and have all types of resources. Whereas people that are commuting to these companies, you know, it's hit or miss whether or not those school districts are going to be up to par. So there's going to be a divide, in education, because access to education is going to be dependent upon where you live. So from 20 years from now, if we're not where these companies reside and we don't live there, we're not going to have the same kind of access. We're going to have to go to private schools or find other ways to get the education that we need. So when I thought about this problem, I was like, well, we've got to get more young people, young black people, into technology. So how are we going to do that? I will get into more about how we get into that later, but right now, Keith, please come to the front. So right now, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and tell us about the position that they're at now, so that in order to give you a little bit of context of the discussion that we're getting ready to have. Okay, so Lisa, why don't you start?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Lisa Lee, and I lead diversity and inclusion at Pandora, and that's Pandora Music, not bracelets, in case you were wondering. But it's okay if you love bracelets. Like Kevin said, the station that you were just listening to is instrumental hip hop. That's also another hidden secret on the platform that nobody knows about. I was hired about 3 years ago to start a diversity initiative at Pandora and to build out what building an inclusive workforce would really look like, and how do we tap into the talent of our main hubs, which are Oakland, Chicago, New York, and LA, as well as 40 other offices across the United States. And our charter is really clear, which is how do we actually build a workforce that reflects music. And we all know that, the number one most beautiful and powerful thing about music is in its diversity. And we cannot be successful as a platform, as a business, if we don't reflect it. So that's what I've been doing. A lot of people wonder if I have anything to do with the actual diversity on the platform. That's a very small part of my job. I am very much focused on the internal makeup of the employees, as well as their day-to-day sort of experience. And my hope is that by building a diverse workforce, those perspectives will be funneled into the way that we're thinking about how to deliver music and what I call pure joy to billions of people.
Hi everyone, I'm Jayakumar. It's great to see how diversity has become a hot button issue in the tech industry. In higher ed, it's been the focus of scholars and scholarly research for the past 3 decades, and it's not because there's a higher level of consciousness per se in higher ed, but rather that there was some litigation at the national level that has really driven this work. And so that's some of the work that I've been involved in, and currently at the University of California, Riverside. So my research looks at diversity and inclusion and how students use agency to be successful and get through higher education when they're not being included. And what else? I think that's it. I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Well, it's an honor to be here and to have you and the listening audience pay attention to this very important matter. I'm the Executive Vice Chancellor for Strategic Partnership and Advancement in this district, this remarkable district, Peralta Community College District. And at the core of this district is social justice, equity. And it is intentional on our part to ensure that Blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, Asians, Pacific Islanders, whites, all sectors of our community, those I've named, those I've not named, are represented in our classrooms, that they're prepared to enter industries, especially the high-tech industry, information, communications, technology, because of the transformative effect that this industry is having on our planet. It's changing the way we behave, the way we think, the way we feel, quite frankly. Whether it's music, whether it's the way we engage with one another, it changes, it creates opportunities, and it also creates constraints. In the degree to which Black folks are represented, Latinos are represented, Native Americans are represented, all of us are represented, will better reflect the potential to respond in responsible ways to the needs of individuals, families, and communities. So we're intentional about the work that we do in this district, purposely, because we understand that if we're not at the forefront of creating the conditions or informing them, we're just going to receive whatever we're going to receive. And we know the history of this country and the planet. It's more about negating and undermining unless we're intentionally focused on the health and well-being of the greater community. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bryan Brown. I am the Associate Professor of Science Education at Stanford University. I'm the Associate Dean of Graduate Studies in the Graduate School of Education. More importantly, I was born and raised in Oakland. I have a perspective on this city that I think is interesting and critical. What I study is how do we help teachers do a better job of teaching and getting students involved in science? How do we prepare students to see themselves as scientists As Kevin mentioned earlier, for the last 4 years, first through a grant from the National Science Foundation and later through a grant from Google, we ran summer camps called the Science in the City Summer Camp. And the idea is pretty simple. It is very difficult to convince somebody that they're not supposed to be a scientist when they're working as a scientist. You can't tell me what I can't do if I'm doing it. And so the simple message today we want to talk about is what are the things that we can do to make sure that our young people are getting access to an industry that continues to grow. Despite the recession, I want you to think about it. How many phones did you buy during the recession? Technology people understand something very important. If we can build things that break and are replaceable, right, we'll have money in our pocket. So we need to make sure our kids are producers and not consumers.
I think this one might work. My name is Keith Carson. I have the privilege of serving on the Alameda County Board of Supervisors. Take a second to just put the county into perspective. The county has 14 cities, 1,500,000 people. Our statutory responsibility is that we come right under state government in terms of regional government and oversee the health, safety, and welfare of the people that live within the 800 square miles of Alameda County, and there are 5 of us who serve on the board. As it relates to technology, our county has been immersed in a number of ways of approaching it. One is we wanted to level the playing field for people that we employ within Alameda County that might have technical skills, engineering skills, math skills, science skills. And so in order to level that playing field, we have a procurement committee to ensure that as we spend our tax dollars, that we spend them in communities that reflect Alameda County, women, veterans, people of color, at an even playing field. We ban the box to ensure that people reentering from incarceration have an opportunity to, first of all, show that they have the ability to perform the job as a result, as opposed to having to explain where they've been in terms of incarceration. We began in 2012 to hold hackathons in order to try to pull the best, not only out of our employees, in order to come up with incentivizing people, exciting people about science, technology, engineering, and math. But we wanted to make sure that we reached out, and we also do it in our high schools throughout our county in order to expose opportunities for people to make the connection about those opportunities in the tech area, in science and engineering and math. We partner with businesses in this area and have hosted for the last 5 years every year in Berkeley for the entire county a full day for 500 young people, primarily of color, primarily black, people who have not been exposed to technology, engineering, and math. And we actually help to fund them to be there that day. We make sure that some of those businesses take them to their business sites, such as Bayer and other places, so that they can experience firsthand that. Biotech Partners is a program that actually goes into the community, not necessarily to the school, because we know a lot of our people who need those jobs are not necessarily in high school, not necessarily in school, to let people know that there is an opportunity for them to get a good and decent and well-paying job in our businesses that are here that deal with science, technology, engineering, and math.
Keith, you're getting into, I think, the questions that I'm about to ask you. We're just doing introductions right now, so I don't want to steal your thunder. I don't want to steal your thunder yet.
We'll stop there with the
I just want to get you. I'm gonna get you right there. So I'm gonna lay down the foundation for the panel, and then I'll start with Keith because he's already on a roll. But the purpose of this panel, I go to. If many of you are connected with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, you know that I might go to a conference or two every now and then. Okay. And so the problem I have with going to most conferences and panels, and the reason why I told Sean if I was going to be involved in this panel, I'd have to do it my way. And he said, okay. So I don't like, it's not like I like to get really successful, smart, bright people together and have them share information for about 5 or 10 minutes and then go back to their silo and go away. And the people who are in this audience who have pretty much no power to change the things that they're going to talk about go away feeling helpless. My goal really is to have people that are these are experts in various fields. I want them to have a conversation. I've got questions that I already given them, so they've already prepared. But what I'd like for them to talk about is different perspectives on this problem that we have in this area, in Oakland particularly, and how we can work together to fix the problem and then agree to revisit, maybe even come back in the next 6 months or so and check back in. Well, we've got academics, we have, elected officials. Barbara Lee is on her way. She's at the, coming from the celebration or anniversary of the East Bay fires. So she should be here momentarily, but we have elected officials. We have a lot of different people with a lot of knowledge, and I think that this panel, we won't solve the problem of the lack of diversity in technology, but we'll at least get the conversation started and hopefully be able to revisit it somewhere down the road where we can make some progress. So as I say that, let me grab my questions. No, Siri, I'm not asking you to do nothing. All right. Stop. Technology at its finest right now. Okay, so I want to, since Keith, you were started going in, I'm going to go right to you first. I asked you, I said, what resources exist on the local and county level that can help increase diversity in tech from a workforce perspective, nonprofit organizational perspective, and an entrepreneurial perspective? And what, if any, are coming down the road?
What was the last part of that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Entrepreneurial perspective?
No, and what?
What, if any, are coming in the future? So meaning, like if they're not existing already, what kinds of things you might be working on that we'll see in 6 months, a year, however long it takes for it to happen?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
As I already stated, there are some of the programs that we've already put in place by ourselves, hosting hackathons, by working with not only the governmental entities that are here, and we do network with our cities, our state, and others around trying to make sure, first of all, that all of the rules, regulations, and laws that are out there are those that give everybody a level playing field. I think that that's very important because we know that opportunities kind of have been historically in one segment of our community, not universally shared. And so we leverage the fact that as government, we can help to write those kinds of laws to make sure that people do have a level playing field. Secondly, the fact that we do spend a lot of your tax dollars on services with a number of our businesses, we ensure that our businesses know that we want to make sure that our hiring practices are those that reflect the community that they want to come into. We've already sat down with Uber and the decision makers in Uber to make sure that they know that as they come into Oakland, that they're not just going to come here and hopefully spend dollars at the restaurants, but we want to make sure that they integrate into their administration, into their board of directors, into their workforce, people that come from the Oakland community, that come from the East Bay community. And we do that with all of the businesses that come here. We've done it with Tesla and any of the businesses that may relate to science, technology, and math, or for this conversation, technology.
Great. And with that, from the county level, how well do you work with the cities? Like, for example, Oakland. I know that there's a distinction between when it comes to school boards and school district with Alameda County and the city, but is there any overlap? Do you have any How would that work for people for Oakland and Alameda County?
So real quickly, people are very aware of the federal government. You're very aware of the state government. You read every single day about your city government, but there's this mysterious regional government, which is county, and I kind of started off on that level. Given the fact that we do have those 14 cities, which includes Berkeley, includes Oakland, and goes all the way out to Fremont, all the way out to Livermore in our sphere, we meet on a regular basis. There is a structure that helps us to meet on a regular basis. This time, last Wednesday, we were in Emeryville with the mayor's conference, with all the mayors talking about the issues that affect this area, and that happens on a monthly basis throughout the county. I happen to have the privilege of overseeing the largest business association in both Contra Costa and Alameda County. That is kind of an interesting hybrid organization, because while we have 800 paid and active members that come from business in the corporate community, which is very diverse, from Chevron to Bayer to Clorox to medium and small-sized businesses, as well as the chambers, including the ethnic chambers. We also have the labor groups sitting there. We have academia sitting there, because Peralta is also there. Cal State East Bay is also there. That is where a lot of decisions and discussions are being made about how do we keep business here, how do we attract business here, how do we prepare the workforce for business here. And we're not talking about just at the college level. We're really talking about starting at elementary school, so that you start to understand what's available. So that ability for regional government allows us to act as that platform to have a number of different discussions. With ongoing relationships that we have through that, we're able to kind of unify our approach to ensuring that we're talking with one voice about the need to make sure we diverse our workforce. We have a diverse workforce. One other additional thing, about 20 years ago, a number of people in the room know that we started the Black Elected Officials and Pastors, an organization of the East Bay, which meets on a regular basis, which brings us together to talk about the issues that are specific to the African American community. And so we also try to take the different brilliance of the people who serve on those different bodies, those community-based organizations, those businesses, to come up with one voice when we're talking, so we don't have a confused message about what we want for Black folks in this community.
And I've attended those. Thank you for that. Our next question is going to be geared to Dr. Uma Jayakumar, right? Got it. Woo, I butchered it earlier. Tell us about your research and how you see the tech industry can benefit from it.
Okay. First, I just want to give a caveat that I have much more, I find more interesting areas of research, like student agency that I mentioned, and colorblind racism, and how that impacts social spaces. But the area and the area of research that I wanted to talk specifically about today is one that I'm very passionate about, but is also can be frustrating because it's a strategic area of research that's oriented toward advocacy. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you are things that are common sense probably amongst people in this room and things that we agree with, but it's really helpful to have research evidence in these areas in order for us to advocate with people that don't agree with our perspectives. So the first, so I wanted to talk about three main learnings from this strand of research. And the first one alludes to the why, like why diversity is important beyond being important for social justice reasons. And so 2 decades of the research I mentioned in the higher ed realm focused on advocacy at the Supreme Court level, was focused on proving that diversity was important, investigating various outcomes, and also establishing that diversity was related to those outcomes, and outcomes from learning to adjustment to college, success, retention, and a host of other outcomes. So for the first 20 years, that's what it was focused on, and then when the Supreme Court agreed that diversity was important and started challenging the premise of affirmative action in different ways, then the research shifted to have advocacy in different ways. So the first point is the the breadth of literature in education and now starting in the tech space that documents the educational or the benefits of diverse teams for positive outcomes, for better decision making, for better problem solving, and for innovation. And one personal example I thought I'd mention, I've recently spent some time with someone who created or discovered, or I guess founded, is that the right term probably, founded the, what is it, the prepaid debit card. And when I was talking, and he is a billionaire now from that. His name is Roy Sosa, and he was telling me that he came here as an immigrant. He was applying for citizenship. He didn't have very much money, and the reason he thought of it was because it would have been a disaster to have a regular debit card. So the types of solutions that we can think of if we're in diverse groups or we're serving the communities that we're from, it really expands the possibilities. And then there's a host of literature in the business field, and I won't mention all of those studies now, but I'm happy to send those to people who are looking for that type of evidence. And the other two learnings that I want to focus on speak to how we get to the proven benefits of diversity and inclusion. And so much of my recent research is focused on the importance of critical mass, which is more than token numbers, which usually ends up being more than token numbers, but it's hopefully more than that. And it's important for shaping participation and comfort and quality of engagement. And this is important at various different levels of the organization, so not just amongst engineers or in kind of, but it's important in the boardroom and the CEO level and kind of like at all different levels of the organization. And this goes for racial diversity and gender diversity. So critical mass decreases racialized vulnerability and increases healthy cross-racial engagement. And beyond demonstrating this in my own work and establishing it at the policy level, there's been research for the past 5 decades and across fields, including medicine, sociology, business, law, that talks about the importance of critical mass. And I wanted to talk about a great illustrative example outside of higher ed and outside of tech as well. And that's the study of critical mass with bicyclists. And how many of you remember the day when bicyclists were given access to the roads? Okay. Okay, so some people remember. I remember because most of my students were late to class that day. And when they came, they were upset. Many of them were upset. And so we started talking about it, and coincidentally, we were talking about affirmative action and critical mass at the time. And I started asking them questions about why they were upset, and we named who in the room drives a car, who depends on a car for getting to where they need to go. They obviously needed to come to class and weren't able to get there. Some of them were about an hour late. We also talked about who would be willing to give up more days for bicyclists to take over the road. And of course, everyone refused or didn't want that to happen. And so I think that example of critical mass, which has been studied by sociologists about how when there's, depending on the context, whether it's a small or a large space, there's different numbers that lead to a comfort level amongst bicyclists to take over or to be on the road with cars. And I think that's an important example to think about because it alludes to not only the importance of having more than token numbers, but it alludes to the importance of the folks that are in the privileged positions that are used to having access to the roads need to give up their privilege in order to make room for more women, for more minoritized individuals to come into the space. So I think that's an important discussion to start to have as well. The third point is on the importance of organizational culture and climate and how it has major implications for signaling inclusion. And it's important for retaining gender and racial diversity at various levels of the organization once present. But it's also important for ensuring that folks aspire to be in the space. So it's, we talk about in higher ed and in the tech space as having a pipeline issue, and it's important to address those issues, but also like the idea that if you build it, they will come is very true as well, that it's important to create an inclusive space that is welcoming, that signals that women and minoritized people are welcome in order for people to aspire to want to be in the tech space. So I wanted to provide 3 takeaways, but I can do that later if you want to.
You can do that now.
Okay. So 3 takeaways related to the 3 points. With the first point, which I didn't want to overly emphasize, which the why of diversity beyond the social justice imperative, is that what's been achieved is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of solving problems across all communities with mutual benefits for companies and diverse markets. So that was just the first small point. But the latter 2, given the theme of the Black Panther 50th anniversary, the second takeaway relates to my second research point. As outlined in the 10-point program and demands of the party, the goal was full participation and shifting problematic power relations, and not merely token representation and lip service. So it's important to incorporate this principle into the tech diversity conversation at this early stage. In other words, we often hear about the conversation in tech, and tech being known for disrupting normative ways of life, of like scaling those disruptions. And it'd be really great to start to think about how the tech industry can also be disruptive on a large scale in terms of the gendered and racial norms and practices that protect the current status quo and those who are most often represented. And according to a recent Forbes article I read, the sample average of African Americans working in the world's biggest tech companies are at 8% currently, and Latinos are at 7%, and women make up less than 1/3 of these positions. And these numbers dramatically decrease in top-level and executive positions. So a small necessary first step is achieving critical mass at multiple levels of the organization, and also thinking about how we create space amongst and challenge the privilege of those that do have most of the access. The third takeaway related to the organizational climate and culture speaks to the problem of low representation, again, not being a mere coincidence and natural pipeline issue, but that some first steps that need to be taken are assessing the culture and climate now in industries. And I know that folks are starting to do that, but doing so in-house as a starting point, but also it requires bringing in outside evaluators and involvement to engage those that are most vulnerable, and that often end up leaving if they're not engaged.
Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to go to Elnora Webb, right? Close? No cigar. Okay, I'm going to get these names right. But Dr. Webb, what are some of the programs and resources at the community college level that are available for the community to avail themselves of to enter the tech industry?
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge this brilliant professional to my right for stating some of the things that we take for granted. Just because the workplace says, welcome, come in, does not mean that it's actually welcoming and allows for one to thrive. So the organizations have to be intentional. And the nature of what we do here in the Peralta Community College District at Berkeley City College, College of Alameda, Merritt College on the Hill, and Laney here, where you're at here in Oakland, beautiful Oakland, is all about intention. The faculty, and there are at least 20 faculty members who teach across these colleges in computer information systems, beyond the other hundreds of faculty members who impact the lives of our students. And the intent of our programs in computer information systems is to ensure that people leave with certificates of proficiency, typically 16 units, certificates of achievements, anywhere from 44 to 60 units, and certificates, and also associate degrees of arts, a few of those, and primarily associate degrees of science in computer information systems and computer sciences. And we have both major areas, if you will. what we call software or applications. We also have infrastructure or hardware. And intentionally, we've developed specific programs in a way that aligns with what our Supervisor, Keith Carson, indicated. We're a major network of organizations throughout this city and beyond, throughout the East Bay. In the city of Oakland alone, we have over 1,000 community-based organizations. Can you imagine that? Literally, small and large, working with governmental institutions as well as our four-year institutions and the Oakland Unified School District. And as Peralta is a partner in those various organizations, we literally create advisory groups to inform each one of those certificate and degree programs. So let's take Merritt College, for example. We saw an area that was in need, and all of our programs are directly responsive to the needs of industry. They're not just interesting fledgling programs because someone has an interest. We create advisory boards that are made up of industry leaders from GoPro, from Google, from Apple, go on. And these individuals come to us and say, here's what we need in the area of applications, in the area of infrastructure. And so our curriculum reflects that. So at Merritt College, we created cybersecurity. We had not had that in this district. And it's a remarkable program. The students who come in, some of them have some experience in the information communications technology industry. Most do not. And some are fearful of the notion of even being exposed to mathematics, let alone thinking about numbers in terms of programming, C++ or Java or some other a software application. And of course, many of them have not actually had their own technology to play with. And they're given access to that technology. Some of them are able to take some of the technology home. But in this cyber program, industry experts are sat down with our faculty, and they're in the classrooms, team teaching with the faculty, exposing students with just-in-time, new, state-of-the-art technology. Some of the students are able to take it home, play with it. In fact, part of the project-based learning experiences they have is to be exposed to some of the context, a little bit of the application, then they have to take that product home, whatever that product is, that proprietary material, and they work with it, they play with it, they engage in teamwork assignments to figure out how they can create something that has yet to be created, that has led to a number of them being quite engaged when in fact they began recognizing that they had limited exposure and thought they would not be successful. So we have cybersecurity at Merritt College. But in addition to that program, we have another 16 other computer information systems related programs available for individuals to pursue in this district at each of our colleges. And at Laney College, for example, one of our faculty members, and I'll go back in a second because I want to acknowledge some of these remarkable individuals. But one of our faculty members saw the possibility of doing something during the summer. No one asked him to do it. He was working with a community-based organization. Again, we're highly networked in the community. And said, okay, why don't we welcome all the high schools throughout the county? And so 24 high schools responded and sent 41 students here. One summer and then another 40 or so the next summer. And out of that, over, I think 97% this summer, only one left. And last year, I think 3 left because of some issues. But most of them stayed throughout that summer program, were exposed to industry experts. And these are high school students who may not have thought that they were college material. They're on the college campus. They're being exposed to programming. They're going and visiting Google. They visited a couple of other places, including Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. They came back and recognized they're ready to enter STEMs. Perhaps not the information ICT industry, but they're ready to enter some area of technology. Well, that's what we're about. And so for those who are here who know what we do, thank you for being part of it. Those who don't know, let me share with you some of the programs. Advanced Windows Desktop, Applied Computer Information Systems broadly, computer networking, computer programming, network support technician, web programming, web publishing, and again, their certificates and their degrees that result from that. Some of the Bay Area networks, and this is important to know that, and I'm so proud of you, Kevin, we understand the gap.
Me?
Okay? We understand that there's a lack of information, a lack of support historically for our young people, and for that matter, for many of us as adults. And so whether we're talking about Hack the Hood, Oakland coding boot camps, many of them, the Kapoor Centers, Coding Nation, YesWeCode.org, the Hidden Genius Project, Black Girls Code, Black Boys Code, Oakland Unified School District Partnership with Code.org. There are many organizations that are working strategically to fill the gap. And the good news, and this is a very important news, they're not working as single agents with assuming that they are total institutions with all the answers. They're working collaboratively so that we can come together to figure out how best to resolve the information gap, the skills gap, and better prepare people for this particular industry. I want to briefly acknowledge Anita Black, Courtney Brown, Jose Flores, Tuan Nguyen, Johnny Williams, Kim Bridges, Barbara Collins, Patrick McDermott, Bob Grill, Manuel Lee, Gary Perkins, and I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, Dr. I think it's Thanat Yang, Neil Dunlop, Valletta Val Duque, Irfan Ortek, Tarif Kazi, Dr. Kazi, and Fayez El Guinea. I know I mispronounced someone's name. It was not purposeful, so my apologies. But these are among the faculty members who are working very hard, conscientiously with business and industries in order to fill the gap and ensure that the quality of what we're offering is not only relevant, it's practical. People leave within a semester, they live within a year, they leave within 2 years with the tangible skills to enter the industry, for that matter, to even begin to build their own organizations. The last thing I'll mention, and maybe not the last thing, but I'll mention, most people don't know, and we have some visitors from the East Coast, and I was so pleased that they asked me questions about our system of higher education in California. We have the University of California system, remarkable system. California State University system, also remarkable. 10 institutions, 20 institutions, but the largest system of higher education, quite frankly, probably on the planet, are the California community colleges. 113 community colleges, and this district has 4 of those. We're all intentional about ensuring that our youth out of high school are ready to move with a sense of understanding and competence. And so we have what I call it a 3-for-1. High school students can attend our community colleges at no extra cost. And when they attend the community colleges, they can complete their associate degree before they complete their high school degree. Or at the same time, they walk to having earned their high school diploma, which means that if they do that, they've completed the first 2 years of their university studies. That's a 3-for-1. That's a remarkable asset that we've provided. And the degree to which we share that with more and more of our youth, we can ensure that they're better prepared. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for answering my question. My next question is going to go to our Congresswoman, who just joined us. Barbara, would you introduce yourself to the audience before I ask you the question? Everyone did that, so let everybody know who you are.
Thank you, Kevin. Now, you know, this is the 50th anniversary of the Black Panther Party, and as a former community worker of the Black Panther Party, I have to say all power to the people, and glad to see everybody. I just know that my work as a community worker then with the Black Panther Party, I'm still working on those same issues now in Congress, and so it's in that spirit that I'm here tonight.
Well, fight never ends. Okay. Well, I was going to ask you, what resources exist on the federal level that can help increase diversity in technology from a workforce perspective, nonprofit organizational perspective, and entrepreneurial perspective?
Sure. Thank you very much for that question. And a couple of things. Let me just say, first of all, we know what the issues are, and I'm really happy to hear the panel discuss all of the local initiatives that are taking place. Because this district, more than any other in the country, since we're next to Silicon Valley, we have a brilliant population of African Americans in my district. There's no way that some of these companies should have between 2% and 5% employees in the workforce. That's just unconscionable. It's wrong. And so I set up the Tech 2020 of the Congressional Black Caucus, which I co-chair, working with Reverend Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition to break this open. And I must say that some companies are doing better than others. And without, we know that power is not going to, concedes nothing without demand. And so we have to remember we got to stay out there pushing these companies to do the right thing. At the federal level, I do have to say, under the Obama administration, President Obama has been phenomenal in leading in terms of federal resources for STEM education, also for all of the programs that Dr. Webb talked about through the Department of Labor and Department of Education. There's one bill that I'm working on that I introduced for the president, Computer Science for All, which would establish a $250 million program in grants to advance computer science education, K through 12. And that's moving along, but I'm on the Appropriations Committee, so this year actually, while we haven't gotten this bill passed yet, we've been able to transfer millions of dollars into computer science initiatives. We have the Department of Education funding many of the programs. I think my district is probably getting more money than most because of all of the phenomenal work that you're doing here, but it's still not enough. But the community college districts, what Dr. Webb talked about in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of all of the efforts that are being put in here, there's a federal funding piece of everything. And so the big piece, though, is the $250 million coming from Computer Science for All. And I think we're going to get that done before the president leaves office.
Fantastic. It's the first time I heard about that, so thank you for the work that you do on the Hill for us. And I did attend your workshops during the Congressional Black Caucus and was very impressed with what's going on there. Now, I'd like to ask Lisa, who's with Pandora, kind of representing the corporate perspective of all this on the panel. What is your company doing both internally and externally to address its lack of diversity and the industry's lack of the same?
So there are a number of things that we are currently working on and actually have been working on. From the beginning, our key pillars of focus have always been the same, which is that we need to grow our underrepresented employees, we need to engage them, and we have to retain them. And we have to think about that cycle holistically. So often people think about diversity as recruiting and hiring, and so often we forget about the sense of belonging. So exactly like what you said, how do we create a workforce where people don't end up leaving and dropping out? And I actually think it's very interesting when I hear the argument of, well, we need to just fill the pipeline in order for people to be able to make it into the company, and hopefully through this utopia system, people are gonna naturally make it to the top. As an Asian American woman, Asian people are in the tech industry, and we are not making it to the top, right? So I think we have to question that very critically, and not constantly look at the pipeline or letting people distract us to always talk about the pipeline. There have been employees that have existed in tech, and we have to start talking about the tech industry not, as if people of color don't currently exist in tech. So for us, we were able to move the needle. When I started at Pandora, we had 3% African American employees and 5% Hispanic Latinos. Obviously unacceptable and very abysmal, especially given the very diverse hubs that we are in. And since 2 years ago, we have moved the needle by 6 percentage points total. and we are currently at 5% African American employees and 8% Hispanic Latinos. And I want to also make sure that I recognize that we also have 8% of employees who identify as biracial or multiracial. I feel so often the narrative is talking about black and brown people, and we forget that we are moving in a society where the lines are starting to become much more integrated. And our approach has always just been, again, integration. I think people oftentimes ask me, like, what are the exciting programs or initiatives that your company is working on that is, helping mothers or helping fathers or helping, people of color? And I actually say, I work on all of the non-sexy stuff. And the non-sexy stuff is not programs. It's about the day-to-day processes and tools and the way that we look at our people practices. What kind of metrics makes it to our execs? If we're providing them, weekly or bi-weekly updates in terms of how hiring is going or how revenue is going, then why are they not getting the monthly data as it relates to our applicant funnel or as it relates to how we're doing on the diversity front? So it's really about, I think, one, developing a philosophy that, we are going to start integrating everything with diversity and thinking about diversity as part of just great talent management. And two, actually, once you have developed that philosophy, you have to change that mindset. You have to change the hearts and minds, and then you have to get tactical. So we're really excited that, together with the Congressional Black Caucus's, push, pushing the tech companies in the right direction, we are really, well, I can't even say excited. I'm very comforted that in the next few weeks, Pandora will be coming out with public diversity commitments. And that's the first step in the right direction to holding ourselves accountable, setting a standard in our industry for what we want tech to look like.
Kevin, can I just say something to Lisa?
Sure,
Lisa,
go ahead.
I'm really glad you're there.
I'm really
Let me
glad
tell
you're
you,
here.
We've been at Pandora in the middle of Oakland, California. Yeah. Thank you very much for the update. Many of the companies around have done implicit bias surveys and studies. I don't know if Pandora has it. I'm just interjecting right now this because Lisa's here, and I know where Pandora was. And I'm wondering if you all have done, these implicit bias studies which showed that you really may or may not know that you're discriminating against people who are not part of the culture of the tech sector.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And that actually is a program that I can talk about. So, I think a lot of research has shown that when you do implicit bias trainings in a vacuum, it basically makes people aware that they have bias, but then they just go home and go on with their days, right? And in fact, some people turn out to be even more biased, than before the training. The way that we have integrated implicit bias into our curriculum is that we have a curriculum at Pandora called Leading at Pandora. And it's the core curriculum that every single people manager has to take. And just like how they have to learn about, emotional intelligence, leading with empathy, and, leading with curiosity, we're also asking them to understand their own filters and how it applies to the different risks and will of different populations. So we are not saying, because to be honest, like if I said, hey, all right, everybody here, you have to go to a, sensitivity training, I don't know how many people here would actually sign up to go, right? I probably wouldn't go either myself. So again, it's about integration. It's about how do we make sure that every single opportunity we have at the company, we're pulling the levers and we are putting the diversity lens on every single thing that we do.
Yeah, but you need to require employees to do it or they don't work there.
Yes, absolutely. So our hope is that first the 500 people managers will be going through it, and that next year we have a inclusive leadership training rolling out where, again, diversity and implicit bias is a part of that core curriculum for every single employees.
Now, Lisa, not to put you in the hot seat because you're the only
love
corporate
hot seats.
voice here. We did invite Uber, and they were very close to being out here in the hot seat with you. But my last follow-up question to you. Oftentimes I go to panels and I hear, the companies get beat up in some respects, but what I would like to ask you is, how can the community help you achieve your diversity goals? What do you need from us?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to say a few things that I don't know if it's going to be really popular here, but I hope that it's going to be taken well. The first is that we have to participate to understand. And what I mean by that is we have to participate in technology, despite the digital divide, to really understand how technology works. Because if we don't understand how it works, we cannot teach and we cannot lead, right? So we have to try the new apps. We have to learn how different software works, and we have to really be able to play and tinker. Although I do understand that there is an access barrier. But let me debunk some myths here. 70% of the jobs at Pandora do not require a computer science degree. And that is actually the case for a lot of tech companies. The job that has the least barrier of entry in tech actually are in client services as it reports to advertising, and customer service as it relates to people asking for help. And while I appreciate so much the work that my peers are doing on this panel around STEM education as it relates to technical training, I have been mentoring young people for a very long time. And what is the most frustrating to me is having young people work on my team who have their high school GEDs, who have taken college classes, and they cannot read or write. So I think that's a very real problem that we have to address, that reading, writing, and critical thinking are luxuries now, and that not every single student has the ability and the access to do those basic things. Because without those basic things, they cannot be in customer service at any tech company. They cannot be in any operations support roles. And again, those are the easiest, lowest barrier of entry roles that will get you $50,000 a year to start with. So we have to think about that, in addition to, of course, thinking about engineering and how we can increase the representation on those front. But let's not be too narrow in our approach. The second thing is we need to all do what we need to do, which means that my mother is a very wonderful woman. Sometimes she's a little rough on me, but I just remember growing up. Anytime I would come home and I would tell her about something my older brother did or getting bullied at school, she would always ask me, "Well, what is your role in this?" Right? And I hated hearing that growing up, and sometimes I hate having that mentality myself of always asking, what could I have done better in this situation? We have students that are applying to jobs and they cannot compete because no one has helped them to say, hey, your resume margins are 4 inches wide. They should be 1 inch wide, right? We're not doing what we need to do to really support the young people who need to be out there competing. So I understand there's a lot of nonprofits, a lot of programs that are out there supporting our young people, and it's a very, very, very hard job. But just like how, I bust my butt every single day to change the internal practices of Pandora, I look to the community to really, support the young people that are trying to make it in our workforce, and we cannot give up on them.